Welcome! I bet you're confused by the thumbnail. That sure doesn't look like the Western Air Temple I know. And you're right, it doesn't. In the show, they never show the bottom of the chasm, it's just covered in fog. It's probably a 1,000-foot drop or more, but in Minecraft, I'm limited by a far shorter build height, and I'd like to be able to build tall structures above ground eventually, so that means this build won't be to scale, which also means that I took some creative liberties with what could possibly be at the bottom here, and what I think a civilization living on the cliffside might need to flourish. So let's get started, shall we? This is the block palette for the canyon for now because I want to have a river at the bottom and a nice gradient for what looks like limestone, I think, in the show, to a saturated wet riverbank and the birch here for that transitional block between the two. But before we get to any coloring, first we need a very big hole. This is part one of how many I'm not sure. I'm splitting it up at least into the first landscaping phase, the main building phase, and the top landscaping phase with the forest and the key elements from the show. And I'm splitting it because my builds usually take me a long time and go unfinished as I lose interest, but I thought maybe if I posted the first bit, not disappointing anyone who really wants to see the completed build would be motivation enough, because I really have been wanting to make this and I do hope I get to finish it. So with this build and carving this hole, I'm also practicing my world edit skills, and if you're curious, I'm primarily relying on the erode brush, the smooth brush, the sphere brush, and the mask command. What this does is let me shape these walls to look a little more organic and also essentially paint bucket whatever blocks I want by masking that specific block type. So with all this terracotta, it's a sphere brush for terracotta masked to stone, so it only changes the stone and doesn't also replace the air blocks. I then use the replace near command that grabs every single block you ask for in a set radius for huge swaths of the sandstone, and it grabbed over 2 million blocks of stone and caused quite a bit of lag, but it saved me a ton of time here. I could have very easily made it simply the void down here, but I wanted to challenge myself, and this whole video is a challenge. I've never tried to record one of my big builds like this, all mistakes and backtracking included. So instead of the void, I thought first about what geological forces could have made this chasm. It could have been shifting plates or massive sinkholes, but I had canon that it was a very old river. If you're using World Edit and working with a lot of water, what I did here was make a flat surface one block below where I want the river to sit with the red wool, covered it with water, and then made a water brush to replace the wool and filled in the gaps afterward, and it was about as painless as I know how to make it. And putting a river at the bottom gives the air nomads a constant fresh source of running water and the means to plant crops to feed themselves and their bison, as the land surrounding above is either arid and empty or thick forest that Zuko camps in, and none of it shows any remnants of agriculture, and since they're vegetarian, they need a means to farm their food. I then went back and added some sugarcane for some green and some seagrass to the riverbed to break up all this brown. And then, upon looking at what I'd created so far, I realized that it wasn't deep enough. I believe I set this world to be 120 blocks deep below the grass line, so I used some more world edit and brought the entire canyon bottom down a couple dozen blocks, which meant retexturing everything in the new gap. I ended up leaving some of the birch texture as if it were an old waterline from some ancient flood, and I like that it breaks up all the sandstone here. And once it was fixed, it was time for more green. In the wide shots from the show, there appears to be grass and trees growing out of the nooks and crannies, so with scale in mind, I began adding some dead bushes and the new dead grass block and some sand to put them on. I also added the new living bush for some more green. And then came the trees. I made two variants up top with fence posts since they're less robust, and I pasted them around the cliff face. The trees at the bottom were all unique, however, and I planted a few of them. Phase 1 is done! Now about that agriculture I mentioned. I want these farms to look built into the land and a little rugged as opposed to anything robust and industrial with clean-cut lines and fancy decor. So for these farms, I picked pockets in the surrounding landscape and just filled them in with a mix of crops in each one and tried to account for dropping onto the crops with a few slabs as a border. And for the final few touches, I added some footpaths over the river, some lanterns to the trees, some lamps along both sides, and a bit of sandstone wall. And after all of that, it still wasn't deep enough or wide enough. So I went through and made it even wider and even deeper. This is about as deep as it will go. Like 3 blocks below this is bedrock. And I added, there's tons of more area up here. And I pushed the edge back here and it's all lit up. So there's a ton of space for all the temple buildings, and it looks like it's pretty deep. I'm gonna have to push it back even more, that's why I didn't bother texturing this very much. So in the next few sessions, 1 or 2, I'm not sure yet, I need to add in the drought desert texture that they were walking on initially. A bit more, they were over here. I'm pretty sure the trees and where Zuko was on this side, but I'd like to be able to have the river coming through it. So I'm going to put the forest and everything over here. And I have a few other surprises that I'd also like to add, including some episode elements and perhaps some pixel art. We'll see. We'll see. Next episode, I would really like to focus on the temple buildings that are hanging, and because I have all this extra space, I would like to add some upright ones over here with all this extra land because they didn't show me the bottom of the the bottom of the chasm in the show. So I'm still going to take my creative liberties and fill this however I please. And I think some like little farming buildings, some extra temples, some statues, just something to have at the bottom here so it's not all hanging. And if that's not in the spirit of the show, well, this is just my take on it. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next part.